She handed him a hot plate with both hands. Even though her manager had warned her, no freebies, no exceptions. The man was old, soaked from the rain, and had a purple heart pinned to his chest. He whispered, "Thank you," and she just smiled. But then her boss stepped out and humiliated her in front of everyone. "You're done," he said. She folded her apron, walked out in silence, fired for an act of quiet kindness. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. 4 Marines walked in, and what they did next changed the meaning of that diner forever. Welcome to Grateful Stories, where tales of compassion and kindness are told. Let's uncover what really happened. Rain fell in steady sheets over the cracked sidewalk outside Maple Street Diner. It was one of those soft, cold March afternoons in Charlotte where the sky stayed gray, and every gust of wind smelled like wet pavement and burnt coffee. The kind of day when people just wanted to be inside, dry, fed, and left alone. The diner sat wedged between a drugstore and a laundromat, just off Maple and 3rd. From the outside, it didn't look like much faded awning, blinking open sign, and a squeaky screen door that never quite shut right. But inside, and by 11:30, the lunch rush hit like clockwork. Forks clattered, receipts printed in bursts. Haley Brooks, still in her high school uniform, was nearly in tears behind the soda station. And Jasmine Carter, 29 years old, soaked sneakers, ponytail tucked into a fraying visor, was moving like she was built for the chaos. She floated between tables, balancing plates and apologies. Booth 3 needed more ranch. Table 9 was missing their fries, and someone up front was complaining about lukewarm soup. But Jasmine didn't flinch. She never did. She'd been here 5 years, long enough to know when a table was about to complain, long enough to remember how every regular took their coffee. People came and went, but she stayed, because in a world that didn't always make room for kindness, she believed in showing up anyway. Behind the counter stood Greg Mallory, arms crossed, shirt starched, hair gelled back like he thought he was on daytime TV. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Greg had a way of talking that made people feel replaceable. Every word from his mouth was a reminder, this isn't a charity, this is a business. And Jasmine had learned, over time, to keep her head down and her heart guarded. But that day, just as she handed off an order slip and grabbed a fresh pitcher of sweet tea, she saw him, an old man, standing by the door, water dripping from his sleeves. His coat was too thin for the weather, and one of his boots was untied. He looked like he'd walked a long way just to remember where he was going. He was black, maybe mid-70s, face line deep, beard salt white, and eyes that looked clouded but not lost. In his hands, he clutched a faded navy ball cap, creased and worn at the seams. His fingers trembled slightly, like they weren't used to being warm. Nobody noticed him. Not the man scrolling through his phone, not the couple arguing about coupons, not even Haley, who was too busy trying not to cry. But Jasmine saw him, really saw him. She stepped away from the counter. Her voice was soft, like she didn't want to scare him. "Sir, are you okay?" He blinked, slowly, then looked up at her like sunlight had just cracked through the clouds. I was supposed to meet someone here. I think," he said. His voice rasped like it hadn't been used in hours, maybe days. She noticed the pin beneath his coat, half hidden by the frayed fabric. Silver, bent, faint inscription of a purple heart. Not a replica, the real thing. "You hungry?" she asked. He hesitated, then gave a small nod. "I could eat something warm." Jasmine didn't ask permission. She guided him gently to a corner booth by the window, one that wasn't technically open yet. She brought over a blanket from the lost and found, placed a glass of water on the table, and headed for the kitchen. Greg saw her. Of course he did. He always watched when he smelled trouble. Jasmine peeled a $10 bill from her tips and slid it into the register, then called out to Raymond at the grill, "Ray, plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, extra gravy, cornbread too." Raymond looked up, furrowed his brow, but didn't argue. He knew Jasmine's heart, and that was reason enough. She brought the food out herself, set the plate down gently in front of the old man. He stared at it for a moment, as if unsure whether he was allowed to touch it. Then he looked up at her with something like awe in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to." Jasmine smiled. "Yeah, I did." She turned to tend her other tables, still moving, still balancing plates. But then she heard it, Greg's voice, slicing through the clatter of lunch rush. "You mind telling me what the hell that was?" She froze. Every fork in the room paused mid-air. "He looked hungry," Jasmine replied, turning toward him. "He didn't order anything." Greg snapped. "And you didn't ask. You gave him food. I paid for it," she said evenly. "From my own tips. That's not how we run things here." Greg's voice rose, enough for nearby tables to hear. "You want to feed every vagrant in Charlotte? Go open a soup kitchen. This is a business." Jasmine felt her cheeks burn, but not from shame, from anger, from the injustice of it all. "He's a veteran," she said. "He served this country, and he's sitting out there in the rain like he doesn't matter." Greg stepped forward, lowered his voice to something quieter and colder. "You don't decide who gets free food. You don't run this place, and I do. And when you break the rules, there are consequences." Jasmine stood tall. "Then take it out of my check. Write me up. Dock me. But don't turn this into a performance." Greg didn't flinch. Instead, he turned to the dining room, raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Just so we're clear, folks, if anyone here is looking for a free lunch, ask Jasmine. She's apparently footing the bill today." The room fell silent. A spoon clinked awkwardly against a glass. Someone near the register muttered, "Damn." Jasmine stood still, fists clenched. Greg wasn't finished. "You're done. Carter, apron off. Get out." She blinked. No warning, no discussion, just public humiliation, served hot. Raymond peeked his head from the kitchen. Haley froze behind the drink station. No one said a word. The old man Elias Monroe stood slowly. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Sir, she didn't do anything wrong. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Greg waved him off like a fly. "Eat your food. Stay out of staff matters." But Elias didn't sit. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out that same bent pin, the Purple Heart. "I served at Quezon," he said quietly. "Most of my unit didn't make it. My boys, they'd never let this stand." Greg rolled his eyes, but the diner was listening now. "She showed me more respect than I've seen in decades," Elias continued. "And you fired her for kindness." Jasmine stepped in, voice firm but low. "You don't owe me anything. Sir, just finish your meal, please." But Elias placed the pin gently on the edge of the table, not in defiance, but like an offering. "They'll know," he murmured. "I'm not alone." It didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a memory being returned to the present. Then Jasmine untied her apron, folded it carefully, and walked out the front door, head high, heartbreaking. Outside, the rain kept falling, but something heavier had just been set in motion. The rain had turned cold. Not the kind that stung, but the kind that soaked through sleeves, stayed under your skin, and made you feel like the world didn't want you there. Jasmine stood at the edge of the sidewalk. No umbrella, no words, just her apron, folded neatly in both hands. The Maple Street bus stop sat 3 doors down from the diner. She didn't sit. She just stood, staring across the road like it might give her an answer. Her chest felt hollow. Not because she lost the job. She'd worked enough low-wage jobs to know they come and go. It was the way it happened. Like kindness was a disease that needed to be stopped in front of everyone. Inside the diner, silence settled like dust after a dropped plate. People still held forks, but they weren't eating. Raymond Ortiz stepped back into the kitchen, eyes unreadable. Haley Brooks wiped her eyes behind the drink station, biting her lip hard enough to leave a mark. She kept glancing at the door, as if Jasmine might suddenly walk back in, but Jasmine didn't. At the corner booth, Alias Monroe sat quietly, chewing slowly. His fingers trembled with each bite. Half his plate was untouched. Across the room, a few customers whispered. One of them nudged another. He said, "Quezon." Someone murmured. Not everyone knew what that meant, but the ones who did froze. Alias didn't move. He wasn't trying to start anything, just eating the first hot meal he'd had in days. The rain outside grew heavier. It slid down the diner windows in crooked lines, and in that blur of gray and silence, Elias's mind drifted uninvited backward, back to 1968. To a hill in Vietnam they didn't name until they lost too many good men to forget it. He'd been a lance corporal then, just a kid with a rifle and a photo of his wife tucked in his chest pocket. They were ambushed near Quezon. Shrapnel hit his left side, punched through him like glass. He should have gone down. But someone was pinned behind a broken transport truck bleeding out. Elias had crawled way through the mud, one arm useless, blood pooling in his boot. He dragged that man 30 yards, inch by inch, under fire. They both lived. The medevac took them out, but not their names, not their bond. And decades later, the VA office couldn't find the right paperwork. Wrong social security digit, wrong platoon listed. He never got the benefits they promised, only the scars. When he came home, no one met him at the airport. His wife did what she could, but cancer took her in '89. Since then, the streets were his home. A cot in a shelter if it wasn't full, a blanket under the train bridge if it was. And today, for a moment, Jasmine had looked at him like he mattered. Then she was gone. The bell above the diner door jingled. Greg didn't even look up. He was too busy typing something on the POS system, like pressing buttons would erase what just happened. But then it jingled again. He turned half annoyed. What he saw made him go still. 4 men stood just inside the door. They weren't wet from the rain. They weren't loud. But the weight of them, of their silence, shifted the room. They wore dress blues, boots still wet, postures straight, but not stiff. These were not kids playing soldier. These were Marines. One had stripes on his sleeve that stopped Raymond in his tracks. Another had a scar that cut beneath his jaw, curling toward his collarbone. All of them carried something in their eyes that said, "We've seen what matters." Greg blinked, forced a smile. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The one in front didn't answer right away. He scanned the room, eyes moving like he already knew what happened, just wanted to confirm it. Then he spotted Elias, still seated, still holding a fork he hadn't lifted in minutes. The Marine stepped forward. "Sir," he said quietly, "we got your message." Elias looked up slowly. His voice was rough. "I didn't mean to cause any trouble." "You didn't," the Marine replied. "But someone got fired for showing you respect. That doesn't sit right with us." Greg's fake smile twitched. He cleared his throat. "Like I said, this is a business. We have policies." Another Marine stepped in. This one was taller, eyes like flint. "You fired the woman who paid for a veteran's meal out of her own pocket. She broke policy," Greg snapped. "She gave away food without permission." A pause. Then the man with the scar stepped forward. Voice low, calm. "Do you know who that man is?" he asked, nodding toward Elias. Greg shrugged. "Some homeless guy." The scarred Marine didn't blink. "He saved my father's life in Quezon." Greg's smile finally disappeared, and with it whatever control he thought he had. "He never told me his name," Elias whispered. "Didn't matter. I just couldn't leave him." The Marine nodded. "He told us everything. You didn't just feed a stranger, sir. You reminded us why we wear the uniform." At the back of the diner, Haley wiped her nose. Her voice shook. "She helps me close even when it's not her shift. She walks me to my car at night." Greg raised his hands. "This is getting out of hand. We're not turning this place into a circus." No, said the lead Marine. We're turning it into a reminder that no one gets left behind. Customers began stirring. A man near the window stood slowly. He pulled out a wallet, left a 20 on the counter. For the vet. And for the waitress who gave a damn. One by one, others followed. Some didn't speak. Some just nodded to Elias, then walked out into the rain. Greg stood behind the register, jaw clenched. But something had shifted. Something bigger than policy. And outside, Jasmine still stood beneath the overhang. She hadn't moved. Didn't know what was happening behind the glass. But Elias, he knew. He sat a little straighter, eyes a little clearer. He looked at the Marines, at the door, and at the silver pin he left on the napkin. And he said one thing. They came, and this time he wasn't talking to ghosts. Greg's voice strained as he tried to reclaim control. All right, folks, he said, forcing a grin. Let's get back to your meals. Enough of the drama. But nobody moved. No forks lifted. No coffee cups clinked. The silence in the diner wasn't awkward. It was intentional. It was the kind of silence that follows after truth walks into the room and dares you to look away. Greg looked around, waiting for someone, anyone to nod, to back him up. But the only thing he got was quiet resistance. Behind the counter, Haley stepped forward. Her voice shook, but it carried. She walks me to my car every night, she said, even when her shift ends at midnight. Greg turned toward her. Haley, this isn't your place. She's the reason I stayed my first week. Haley interrupted. I was going to quit. She told me, don't let one bad shift decide your story. Raymond emerged from the kitchen again. This time, he took off his apron and laid it gently on the counter. She brought my wife soup when she had surgery, he said quietly. Didn't tell anyone. Just left it on the porch. Then came a voice from near the window. An older woman with silver hair and a cane stood slowly. Her name was Mrs. Dolores Benson. She came in every Thursday after physical therapy. I served in the Army Nurses Corps during the Gulf War, she said, steady and proud. My brother came home under a flag. That man, she pointed to Elias, could have been him. She turned to Greg, and that girl Jasmine treated him better than I've seen in this place for years. Greg's jaw tensed. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. An Uber driver stood up next. Reggie. He always sat in the same corner. Quiet, black coffee, crossword. I've been coming here since you opened, he said. Never had a problem, except you. He folded his arms. You bark at your staff. You walk past regulars like we owe you something. You didn't fire her because she broke rules. You fired her because she reminded people what kindness looks like. Greg's face flushed red. He looked smaller than he did 10 minutes ago. Another voice, softer now. From the back, Omar, 17, dishwasher, still wearing his apron, head down, most days in but not today. I was in the back when she gave him that plate. Omar said, she put $10 in the register. She didn't steal anything. Greg tried to interrupt, but Omar kept going. She's the only one who ever asked if I needed a ride home. 2 buses and a walk, every night. Nobody else even knows that. Omar looked down. I don't say much, but I know the difference between a boss and a leader. At that, even a few customers began nodding. Small gestures, but full of weight. The front door creaked open. Everyone turned. Jasmine stood just outside, rain still dripping from the edge of her hood. Her apron still folded neatly in her arms. She hadn't meant to come back. She was only passing by until she saw Haley at the window, waving her in. Please, Haley whispered. You need to come back inside. Jasmine stepped in. Her shoes were soaked, her eyes unsure. But the moment she crossed the threshold, something happened. A few people clapped, not loud, just enough to say we saw what you did and it mattered. Greg tried to stand tall. Told you. Carter, your time here's over. I'm not here to work, Jasmine said softly. I'm here because a man who served this country deserved to eat with dignity. And because I'm tired of acting like kindness needs permission. The Marines turned toward her, one of them broad shoulders. Quiet strength gave her a nod. Miss Carter, he said, you didn't do anything wrong. You did what Marines call the right thing at the hard time. She gave a small nod back. She didn't need praise, but being seen, truly seen, meant more than she could say. The Marine with the scar stepped forward. My name's Staff Sergeant Mason, he said. My dad served with Elias in Vietnam. He looked toward the booth. He wouldn't talk much about the war, but when he did, he always said one name, Elias, said he owed him his life. Elias didn't speak. He didn't need to. Sergeant Mason looked at Jasmine. You helped the man who saved my father, he said. So now it's our turn to stand for you? A hush fell again, but this one felt different, not heavy, just honest. Then Cheryl Miles, who ran the hair salon 2 doors down, stood. I've seen how you treat people. Greg, she said, your little notes in the break room, the threats to cut hours. You didn't fire Jasmine because she cost you $10. You fired her because she made people remember what this place used to feel like. Greg's voice cracked. This is mutiny. No, Raymond said. This is accountability. And then came the quietest moment yet. Elias reached for the Purple Heart still sitting on the napkin. He lifted it slowly, then stopped. One of the Marines placed his hand gently on Elias's wrist. Leave it, he whispered. It belongs here now. Elias looked around the room, at Jasmine, at Omar, at the waitress who helped him like he was someone. He set the pin back down, carefully, like it meant something. Because it did. Tell her thank you, he whispered to no one in particular. Tell her my boys never forget. Then he stood, slower than most, straighter than expected, and followed the Marines out the door. No salute, no spectacle, just quiet dignity and the sound of rain returning to its rhythm. Behind them, the diner didn't feel like the same place anymore. And Greg Mallory, he wasn't in charge anymore. Not really. Not in the ways that mattered. The next morning, Jasmine woke up before the sun. She didn't reach for her apron. It was still folded on the arm of her couch, no longer a uniform, but a memory. She dressed in clean slacks and a soft sweater, tied her curls back with a blue clip, and stepped onto the 710 bus with a different kind of purpose. The ride across Charlotte was quiet. Outside, the streets glistened with leftover rain. Inside, Jasmine held a folder in her lap, resume, references, hope. When she arrived at the Haggerty Veterans Outreach Center, the front desk clerk smiled like he'd been expecting her. Go ahead in, he said. They're waiting for you. The center wasn't fancy, no glass walls, no chrome furniture, but it was warm, smelled like coffee and old paper, and something Jasmine hadn't felt in a long time respect. She was greeted by Jordan Malik, the center's operations director. His handshake was firm, but his voice was calm. We've followed everything, he said. What you did most people wouldn't have. Jasmine shifted slightly. I didn't do it to be noticed. He just looked hungry. That's exactly why we'd be honored to have you, Jordan replied. Full time, good hours, real benefits. You'd be working the front office helping veterans find services, coordinating support, being the first face they see. Jasmine said yes, not right away, but softly, and with the kind of certainty that comes when your heart finally lines up with your work. Later that week, she walked through the center again, this time as part of the staff. She helped a young vet fill out housing papers, referred another to mental health resources, made coffee, listened, and every so often, someone would recognize her from the video. That moment, from the diner captured on a customer's phone, had made its way across the internet, first through local Facebook groups, then to veteran forums, then everywhere. The clip showed Jasmine placing the plate down in front of Elias, Greg's voice rising, the quiet protest of the Marines, and Jasmine walking back into the diner like she still belonged there. The caption someone had added read, "She didn't ask for permission. She just chose kindness." Within 48 hours, the diner's phone line was flooded, but they weren't orders. They were messages, disgust, support, some asking if Jasmine needed help, others saying they'd never eat there again. Greg Mallory tried to do damage control. He posted a generic apology, blamed a misunderstanding, but it didn't work. The tables at Maple Street Diner stayed empty. The regulars were gone. Even the music felt thinner, like it no longer belonged there. One Monday afternoon, Jasmine was restocking brochures at the front desk when a woman walked in. Business suit, tight smile, eyes heavy with something unspoken. "I'm looking for Jasmine Carter," the woman said. "That's me," Jasmine replied, gently folding a pamphlet and stepping forward. The woman extended a hand. "My name is Eileen March. I co-owned Maple Street Diner with Greg. I handled the finances. Wasn't involved with the day-to-day." Jasmine nodded. "I remember hearing your name on payroll." Eileen's face softened. "I watched the video 2 nights ago. I hadn't seen any of it until then. Greg didn't tell me. Just said we lost a staff member." Jasmine stayed quiet. She wasn't there for apologies, but Eileen didn't offer one yet. "I was horrified," she continued. "I stayed up all night thinking about how I could have missed it. I let someone else define the place I helped build." She pulled a small envelope from her purse. "From my personal account? No strings." Jasmine looked at it carefully. "Didn't reach for it right away. I didn't do it for money," she said. "I know," Eileen replied. "That's exactly why you deserve it." Then she added something Jasmine didn't expect. "The diner's being appraised this week. I'm selling my stake. Greg's out. Charlotte deserves better than him. You deserve better." Jasmine finally took the envelope, not because of the money, but because sometimes the right thing needs to be received. 2. Later that evening, Jasmine sat at her kitchen table. The apartment was quiet. She opened the envelope. Inside, a handwritten note and a check for $5,000. The note read, "Thank you for reminding the rest of us what integrity looks like. Use this to build something better." Jasmine didn't cry. Not yet, but her fingers tightened around the edge of the paper, like it grounded her in something real. She looked up from the check. On the counter, her old apron still sat. Next to it, a folded napkin and a small silver pin. Walter No Elias had returned to the center that morning. He brought her the pin, said it didn't belong to a jacket anymore. Said it belonged to the moment she chose to see someone the world ignored. They sat together near the back window. He stared out at the tree line. Jasmine sipped cold coffee. "Do you think it changed anything?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "You gave me a plate of food," he said. "But what you really gave me was dignity." She didn't know what to say to that. So she didn't. She just sat with him. Let the silence speak. At closing time, Jasmine locked the front door and turned out the lobby lights. The center was quiet, but not empty. Outside, the sky was clear for once. The rain had finally passed. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, held the pin in her hand, and breathed in deep. Sometimes kindness doesn't echo right away. Sometimes it takes days or decades, but when it lands, it changes everything. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way, often in the quietest places. Not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes, that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to Grateful Stories, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.